This meeting is being recorded.
Hello to everyone and welcome to today's virtual event. My name is Tanner Swift and I'll be your host for today's session. I'm excited to introduce some incredible speakers for you today, but before I hand the mic over to our presenters, we have a few housekeeping items to cover about this presentation. Today's virtual event will be recorded and made available on demand after the live session, and the playback will also be available on YouTube for rewatch as well. We will provide you with some further details at the end of today's event. Also, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. During the session, if you have any questions for our presenters, you can submit them through the Q&A panel here on WebEx, where we will answer your questions live or during the Q&A portion of today's event. If you experience any audio issues during the event, we ask you to leave the session and re-enter. And if that doesn't fix your troubles, you can use the call-in number displayed on the chat screen. I will post that once again momentarily. So without further ado, I would like to kick things off by welcoming our first speaker, Kavita. Kavita, right over to you.
Thank you, Tanner. Hello and welcome everyone to today's session, which is migrating from prime infrastructure to Cisco Catalyst Center. I'll be your presenter today. I'm a solution architect with Cisco Systems and Enterprise Networking Group. And I have with me my colleague Julio Guerrero, who is also a solution architect in the Enterprise Networking Group. And we both will be delivering the session to you today. And this is if you have any questions, there is the Q. You can type that in the Q&A panel, or you can raise the hand icon as well, so that we can answer your questions. So before we start today's session, I quickly want to take like a couple of minutes to discuss the session's learning objectives. We are going to be learning today a high-level overview for migrating from prime infrastructure to Catalyst Center, formerly known as Cisco DNA Center, as well as we'll talk about some features and requirements of the migration as well. We're going to learn some migration services and options, some tools that we have at our disposal, and the two different methods for performing the migration as well. Then we're going to learn some best practices on how to perform the migration. So the idea is that after today's session, you should feel a little more comfortable with the overall migration strategy, as well as with the processes of working from prime to Catalyst Center. So hopping on to agenda real quick, we'll go over today some migration overview and preparation. We'll quickly go over why you want to migrate from prime to Catalyst Center in the first place. Then we'll do a quick overview of the migration process. We'll go over some prerequisites and some pre-checks that we want to keep in mind before we go ahead with the migration. And then in the next session, we'll go over migration options. We'll basically go over the methods for performing the migration and syncing the data between prime and Catalyst Center. And then we'll review the steps for performing the migration using the options that we have. We'll see a quick demo there as well that Julio would be doing for us. And then lastly, we will briefly also cover Catalyst Center form factors that are available today for migration. So let's jump on to our first section, which is migration overview and preparation. But before we do that, let's look at why we want to migrate to Catalyst Center in the first place. So here is a platform comparison that we have listed on the slide for you. On the left, we have prime infrastructure, and that represents our traditional network management solution. And we have on the right Catalyst Center that's going to be representing our new intent-based network management solution. If you look at the left, with prime traditional network management solution, we have provisioning using device templates, config groups. We get some day zero and day end updates using multiple CLI templates. We have separate software upgrade workflows for wired and wireless devices, and manual image compliance is done via scripting. So there is a lot of data there that we get, but there are not enough insights. However, if we look at the right side, we have configurations which are based on the site profiles on Catalyst Center. So here on Catalyst Center, we can get pretty granular. based on how our configuration on devices gets pushed. We can have it set to specific sites or even different site levels. As we see in the next point, simplified day 0 and day n configuration via updating device settings and profiles, which are assigned to those site levels. We can have simplified workflow for software upgrades using software image management, so no more separate workflows for wired and wireless. Then we have automatic compliance and integrity checks, so we can easily see those right there automatically. We have some, we also have problem area insights and impact analytics with our guided remediation steps on Catalyst Center. So that's the area of catalyst assurance that we are talking about. So when we have issues, we can see how those issues are impacting our network. And then with the guided remediation steps that are offered by Catalyst Center, it's possible to resolve those issues right there as well. And then lastly, we have policy and segmentation control. So if we decide to integrate ICE and deploy SDA Fabric, we can now provide policies on our traffic flows, and we can start segmenting different parts of our network for the sake of better security. So these are some key features that we can expect as we go through the migration. Now, Catalyst Center is a natural evolution for Prime infrastructure because it offers us intent-based networking, it offers us enhanced automation, proactive assurance, and it has a cloud-ready architecture. It has different features like software image management, plug and play, 3D maps, security advisories, AI-based analytics, power over Ethernet assurance, issue remediation, application policies, ServiceNow integration, intelligent capture. I'm just naming a few here just to provide us, just to give us an idea like how these features can provide us with streamlined network management. It can improve our network agility. They can reduce the cost, and they can also boost security at the same time. So that's what makes Catalyst Center really a powerful upgrade for our modern network operations. And that's why we say that it's like a natural evolution from Prime to Catalyst Center. Next, I want to go over this sequential approach to Prime migration. So first, we're going to begin with understanding Catalyst Center. So if you've not already learned about Catalyst Center, it is time for us to get started with it and understand its capabilities. Some, I talked about some basic like key features in the previous slide, but we also want to check the extent of our Prime feature parity as well as use cases on Catalyst Center, in comparison to Prime. What I mean by this is what areas or features of Prime are we currently using that Catalyst Center also supports or might not support at the time. So it's a good idea to start with looking into those use cases first. Then in the next step, we want to assess Prime usage and Catalyst Center compatibility. So we want to assess the current usage of our Prime and compare that usage's compatibility with Catalyst Center. We have an automated tool for doing that. It is called the Prime Infrastructure Assessment and Readiness Tool, or PDART tool. This tool will run on our Prime appliance, and it will automatically check to provide a comprehensive summary of current Prime usage, current use cases, network devices, network scale, along with their compatibility with Catalyst Center. And if we do not want to run the PDART tool, we don't have to. It's an optional step. We can perform those checks manually as well. But it's highly, highly recommended to use PDART tool first. Now, the third step is to prepare for data migration. So in preparation, we begin with those pre-checks, either by, as I mentioned, by using PDART tool, which is highly recommended, and viewing the report that it generates, or by manually checking all the things. We want to follow through on any outlying items as well that may be required, or or catch our attention prior to migration, to make sure that we are following the best practices prior to really start migrating. Then the next step, or the fourth step, is initiating data migration. So now we can start to migrate our data over to Catalyst Center. We get to pick and choose what we want using the coexistence tool. We do have a couple of options when it comes to performing the migration, and we'll talk about that later in the session. And then we complete the data migration. Well, now that we've gone through the migration step using whichever option we choose, whether we do it manually or we do it using the PDART tool, we can now go to Catalyst Center and we can then verify the changes to make sure that everything is showing up correctly. We can check any of our network elements, sites, our maps, any templates, credentials, whether they have synced over during migration or not. And then lastly, we adopt Catalyst Center. We have verified that our data from Prime has been synced properly, and now we are ready to start using Catalyst Center's features and its capabilities, since that is our end goal that we really expect to achieve. So now we're going to jump into some manual pre-checks that we need to do. So we really want to make sure that we check these things before we actually attempt a migration, just to avoid any headache or any confusion later. So one of the big things here is checking the compatibility matrix between Prime and Catalyst Center versions. If we do not have the correct versions matching up, we won't be able to run the coexistence tool. So we definitely want to make sure that we cross-reference that compatibility matrix and make sure that our Prime version is able to utilize the certain DNAC version or Catalyst Center version. The next, we want to verify that the minimum version of Prime is 3.5 and above, and that's going to be for PDART and for coexistence tool as well. Now, the third point is that we make sure that Prime infrastructure appliance can reach Catalyst Center appliance, and that's pretty straightforward, right? We want to make sure that systems can reach each other basically, so that they can pass data, or Prime can pass data to Catalyst Center. And the last two bullets, that's for both systems. In Prime, we want to make sure that we have a user that is of a root or a super user privilege. And then similarly on Catalyst Center, we want a user in the role of a super admin as we go through this process. So these are some of the pre-checks that we need to keep in mind. Here are just some best practices that we recommend before migration. So firstly, it's a good idea to review Cisco validated profile for Prime to Catalyst Center migration. The document that document is a very comprehensive migration guide for Prime to Catalyst Center. It includes requirements, readiness tools, step-by-step instructions, and also the post-migration support as well. Then we want to make sure that our devices in Prime are synchronized and are in a completed state. Then we want to verify that the same location data is not present in the Catalyst Center hierarchy. Because if Prime hierarchy groups that are to be synced are also configured in Catalyst Center hierarchy, then the migration tool sync will override the information for those groups to match what is configured in Prime. After that, we want to check the compatibility with Catalyst Center for the devices that are going to be synced, because when we are using the coexistence tool, we are going to be able to sync the Prime inventory data over to Catalyst Center. So we obviously want to make sure that the devices that are going to be synced are definitely compatible with Catalyst Center. And then we want to make sure that device controllability feature is enabled on Catalyst Center. It's typically enabled by default on Catalyst Center appliance, but if for any reason it's not enabled, we do want to make sure that it is enabled before migration, so that all the devices that are getting all the devices, get the device controllability settings pushed, so that and they show as fully managed in the Catalyst Center appliance. Then lastly, the best practice after migration is to keep one appliance as read-only. That means if we fully migrate what we need to, then we only need to make changes on one appliance or the other in order to avoid any loss of configuration progress if we were to make changes on Catalyst Center. On Prime, we do another sync, unknowingly overwriting the configuration on Catalyst Center. So these are some of the best practices that we should follow. Now in this section, we are going to go over some key tools that we have to automate this migration from Prime to Catalyst Center. So the first one is the PDMT tool, or the Prime Data Migration tool. This is a coexistence tool. It is going to automate the migration of your hierarchies, your maps, your inventory, credentials, templates from Prime to Catalyst Center. So it's going to be able to provide that flexibility to make the changes in the hierarchy and in the network structure, so that we would be able to pick and choose, a little bit there. And we'll see that in the demo coming up as well in detail. Then there is the automation tool available as well to make the process a bit more seamless. That is the PDART tool, or Prime Infrastructure Assessment and Readiness tool. This PDART tool is really going to be used to assess the Prime to Catalyst Center migration readiness on the Prime instance. So we will download the tool and apply it on the Prime instance that we are running. And that tool is going to evaluate our software, hardware, network scale, as well as the use cases in comparison to Catalyst Center. And it's going to output us a report that is going to indicate our migration readiness, and then also recommend us the next steps. And that PDART tool is non-invasive. It is not going to change anything on the Prime instance. So it's going to be a read-only view that's going to only give us a report that is based on our current compatibility with moving into Catalyst Center. So just to it's basically going to provide you visibility if your Prime use cases are currently supported by Catalyst Center or not, and also visibility into when those use cases will become available on Catalyst Center. So basically, PDART tool will get you ready beforehand for the migration. Now, this is a quick timeline or workflow that you can expect to see when you're going to use the coexistence tool for the migration process. So at number one, it's the pre-check section where we want to check connectivity between the two systems. We want to make sure that the compatibility between those two systems and the devices that needs to be synced are all verified. We also want to make sure that our hierarchy in Prime is good to go. And if we are utilizing the entire hierarchy, or we're just doing a few sites, just make sure that it looks good on Prime before we attempt the migration. And then we want to make sure we have device controllability enabled, as I mentioned earlier, as the coexistence tool will bring over those devices. So it's nice to have that setting enabled. That way those devices get full manageability once they get synced over. And all these checks can be done using the PDART tool. And again, it's optional, but we just need to make sure that we also need to make sure that we are using Prime version 3.5 or higher, and we have a user with root access on Prime. And now moving over to actually using the coexistence tool. When we start, we do a couple of things in the beginnings. We start with adding the IP address of Catalyst Center, as well as the credentials. Again, the user that has super admin access. And then coexistence tool will reach out for verification to make sure whether we can reach Catalyst Center or not. Then we are going to begin importing data. So importing location sites, importing devices, importing heat maps, AP location. So that will be, fully handled within the tool itself. And after that, we want to verify the devices. We want to verify the locations, verify the sync setup in our summary section before we actually do the force sync and we begin moving that data over. And then obviously same things need to be verified on the Catalyst Center end as well, in order to make sure that everything has synced well. In the end, we're talking about coexistence and adoption. So we're going to be having coexistence between the two systems. They are going to have the same information based on what we have set to be synced over. And eventually we get ready for full adoption of Catalyst Center. So this is the workflow for the PDMT tool. Now let's talk a little bit about the PDART tool, the tool that gets you ready before or to assess the migration before you do the actual migration. So PDART tool, it's a very valuable tool. It's designed to assist you in planning to migrate from Prime to Catalyst Center. It operates as a read-only tool within your Prime infrastructure environment, and it causes no disruptions to your network at all. Its primary function is to assess your current Prime infrastructure setup and determine the level of compatibility and the level of readiness for a smooth transition to Catalyst Center. It evaluates and analyzes your existing Prime infrastructure deployment for compatibility with Catalyst Center. It identifies your migration readiness. It kind of pinpoints if there are any potential issues or any areas that need attention before migrating to Catalyst Center. It checks for 170 plus use cases, so it automatically examines a wide range of use cases to ensure a smooth transition there. Then it also simplifies the migration process, so it provides actionable insights to streamline your migration from Prime to Catalyst Center. This is a quick example of the PDART report. This is what the PDART report looks like. This report offers you a comprehensive summary of Prime infrastructure usage. It outlines how you utilize your Prime infrastructure, including what all features and configuration patterns. Then the use cases, it analyzes how you use Prime infrastructure for tasks like monitoring and configuration, mapping these tasks to Catalyst Center functionality as well. Then it also checks for compatibility of network devices. It identifies devices in your network that are compatible with Catalyst Center. Then reports, it provides detailed reports on its findings to guide your migration planning. Then scale, it assesses network size, devices, sites, etc. to help determine the appropriate Catalyst Center deployment model for you. And it also recommends the appliance. It suggests the optimal Cisco Catalyst Center appliance based on your network scale and usage. So it'll give you all those recommendations. So it's good to and highly recommended to run the PDART tool and leverage this report before you do the actual migration using the PDMT tool. Now, the PDMT tool, this is an automated tool, and this is also within Prime created to provide you a seamless transition from Prime to Catalyst Center. If you're using this tool to transition between the two systems, we are really taking our first steps into intent-based networking solution, that is to start using Catalyst Center. We can begin to automate device deployment and manage the application user experience in our enterprise. We are going to be able to migrate all our supported devices, site groups, associated maps with them, CMX credentials, if applicable, over to the new solution. Then this tool is considered best practice to proceed with, as it will ensure seamless automated syncing and transfer of data between the two systems to greatly reduce the time that it takes to get up and running with Catalyst Center. And it's also worth mentioning that this tool is using a one-way synchronization system. So only information from Prime will be synced to Catalyst Center and not the other way around. The idea of this tool is really getting your environment synced over to Catalyst Center through a streamlined process. So this is going to be the recommended best practice method for performing the migration due to it being so efficient and intuitive and very less time consuming as well. So this is a screenshot of the PDMT tool workflow, and we would see this later in the demo as well. But I quickly want to mention here that every change, except for AP-related matters, location in maps, or add or remove, the force sync needs to be executed again. So automation continues to be in Prime for all location, and Catalyst Center should be used for assurance. So when you are following the workflow, select the Enable Automatic Synchronization of Data Integrated with Catalyst Center checkbox to ensure that migrated data groups and devices, they stay updated after changes in Prime infrastructure. And then also make sure to select the Include Newly Added Data During Dynamic Synchronization checkbox so that you can automatically migrate newly created groups from Cisco Prime infrastructure to Catalyst Center. If you leave these options unchecked, then Prime is used for automation only for non-migrated location. And Catalyst Center is used for automation only for migrated location. So make sure that we are checking these boxes. So now once we have verified our system using the pre-check item list that we discussed earlier, we also know the methods of migration. We can now actually start to perform the migration. So we're going to start by adding the Catalyst Center to the Prime coexistence tool. We're going to input the IP address and credential for the Catalyst Center appliance. We're going to make sure our sync settings are set so that this is going to happen automatically as the integration takes place. But we also want to enable automatic syncing of the new data that is added to Prime, as well as already migrated data when we go forward. Then we want to select our groups. So the next step in the tool at this point will be selecting all the configured sites on Prime that we wish to move over. And on that same stage on Catalyst Center for the migrated set of data, we'll be able to pick and choose here what site we want migrated to. So if we want and deselect what we don't want to be migrated over. And then the last step there is optional. We can add a CMX server if we have that applicable in our environment. It's not really necessary, but we'll see that on the same sync settings page there as we go through the demo. But if we have that applicable, we can enter the CMX server credential information there, and that can be synced over to Catalyst Center as well as part of the migration process. So this is a quick workflow. Now I want to quickly highlight the difference between an automatic sync versus a manual sync. So automatic sync is an incremental dynamic synchronization of your data from Prime to Catalyst Center based on the earlier selection. Any changes to groups, association, and device credential will be synced. CMX and maps are not in scope of automatic sync, and they need to be triggered via the force sync option. So automatic sync has two modes of operation. First is changes to the already synced groups and devices only are pushed to Catalyst Center. And the other one is that any new groups added as a subgroup to the already selected location group and its device association are also pushed to Catalyst Center. In comparison to manual force sync essentially pushes all data based on selection of groups, irrespective of the previous data push from Prime to Catalyst Center. For any setting change, in order to come into effect, a force sync has to be done. So this is the main difference. Let's look at some of the migration guidelines as well. So if you have CMX is in scope for you. So once the CMX is migrated to Catalyst Center, again, if this is applicable to you, then it will not be managed by Prime infrastructure anymore. And we need to make sure that we are just keeping everything in Catalyst Center at that point. The limit of the number of sites and devices to be migrated will depend on our Catalyst Center appliance model. Any legacy devices which are not supported by Catalyst Center will be under the unsupported Cisco device section. So again, we want to roll back to that same pre-check on and making sure that those devices that are going to be synced are supported by Catalyst Center. And we can do that by going to Catalyst Center compatibility matrix for those devices. And then starting from Prime version 3.9, netconf port details will be synced for devices like CAT 9800 WLCs, which earlier needed to be done manually. So that's supported as well. Then lastly, AP's position in the maps in Prime will fully migrate only if we fully manage the wireless LAN controller as well on Catalyst Center. So these are some of the guidelines here. I quickly want to talk about the different form factors that are available for Catalyst Center migration. So we have a couple of form factors. You may already be familiar with the physical appliance. There was the DN1 and DN2 families that we have been deploying for Catalyst Center. Last year, Cisco also launched the cloud option for Catalyst Center on AWS. And this year, we also released Catalyst Center on ESXi for VMware. The recommended Catalyst Center version on ESXi is 2374. But for AWS and physical appliance, the recommended version is 2355. Now, for those two virtual appliance options, we have scale parity with a medium-sized 44-core DN2 hardware appliance. Most of the features are supported, but there are some considerations and limitations that we need to look at. For example, clustering instance is not supported. High availability for Catalyst Center on VMware and ESXi relies on the native functionality of both the platform, either the high availability on VMware or AWS. Another important thing to note is that there's of course, no cost associated with the virtual appliance itself. The software for Catalyst Center on AWS or ESXi is included in the Catalyst Essential and Catalyst Advantage software subscriptions. But please do make sure to review the ordering guides so that you can verify what needs to be added. There is an annual support package cost that is included when you are placing the order, but there are no any other additional charges for Catalyst Center on AWS. It would just be the use of the AWS cloud itself. One of the biggest benefit in AWS is that you can deploy the Catalyst Center instance in different regions in Asia, Americas, and Europe. So please do review the supported regions as well before you start with your deployment. Also, the use cases and upgrade process and all the features we have available in physical appliance will be same in the virtual appliance as well. Now, Cisco's DN2 appliance reached end of sale on March 2024, like March this year. With that said, there are going to be new options to refresh your hardware either into virtual appliance or the new DN3 hardware appliance. So it comes with the same scale numbers as the medium, large, and extra large appliance. So if we talk about scalability, Catalyst Center software, it offers virtual deployment on both VMware ESXi and AWS. So it provides flexibility and cost saving, as we just discussed. While Prime infrastructure has a large capacity for supported devices, Catalyst Center offers the future with its advanced features for intent-based networking and automation. Additionally, if you have older Cisco devices in your network, version 235 still supports upwards of 500 legacy devices. Please do look at the updated data sheet on 237 so that you are well aware of all the specifications. And you can also look at the new ordering guide for DN3 appliance. Also, please note that the scale numbers for the virtual appliance on AWS and ESXi, they match with the DN3 medium appliance with 25,000 endpoints, 1,000 network devices, 4K access points, 25,000 access control policies, along with the 500 access contracts. So if you're planning to upgrade to any of these options, please do keep an eye on the DN3 ordering guide and the virtual appliance ordering guide as well. So Cisco Validated Profile also provide you the best practice guidelines for migration. These are performance tested with specific hardware and software, and they include detailed scale numbers for you so that you have an idea of how does it take, how does it look like to perform a migration. So the scale performance test has been tested on Catalyst Center 2374, iOS XE 17.1, and Prime 3.10 and 5.1 update 02. So these are some of the things that we must take into consideration. Now it's time for a quick demo here. So I'm going to invite Julio here. So Julio, over to you.
Thank you, Kavita. And thanks everyone for joining us on today's session. Let me share my screen and let me know when you are able to see what we have in here. So as Kavita mentioned, the migration from Prime infrastructure to Catalyst Center has been eased with a couple of tools that we have ready for you, right? First of all, we'll review versions that we are running here. So we have a Catalyst Center here. We're running version 2375. I'm running 310 on this Prime infrastructure. So it's very important for you to review the compatibility matrix, right? This compatibility matrix will be shared with you on a link in a bit. So it's very important for you to review the versions that you will be migrating to from, right? So if you see the Prime 310 requires at least 2337 or Virtual Appliance 2376, that's for the ESXi versions. 310.5 requires almost the same. So you can review that whenever you are looking into the migration process, right? Now, for ease of purpose, we will have a couple of videos that we'll be using as a reference, and then we will come back to review how these reports can be pulled in here, right? So let me get back here, sorry. So let's get started. First of all, you will start reviewing the locations of your network devices. So you can review what you have defined on Prime. You can go to the location itself, review locations that you will be migrating. In this case, we're just moving one test site. As you can see, the test site has a building, 2 floors. Each of the floors should have devices already assigned to it. As you can see, we have a wireless controller, a couple of switches, some access points there. And after that, you can also review the maps, right? You need to make sure that everything is registered, that it's operational, and that it has been onboarded into Prime. Then when you go to maps, you can go to site maps. And in that, we'll be able to verify that all the maps have been loaded into the floors that you will be moving. All this information as a hierarchy, the site names, building floors, and the maps, they will be moved into your Catalyst Center when you are performing the migration. So you can see we have the map here on the building. Test floor 2, we already have some access points, should be there. Access points are there, the Cedric ones. And you can also take a look on the user-defined configuration template. We will take a look on the template in a second. So with that, you will be able to migrate your hierarchy, the site, the floors, the maps, and as well some of the templates that you have been working already on Prime. As you can see, I have a CLI templates. There's just a very basic template that I have here. And you will see this is just a host name for switch 1. Everything that you put together in here and you review here, you will be able to move into Prime, right? From Prime into Catalyst Center. So a little bit on the process, as Kavita mentioned, we have 2 tools that you can find on your Prime. If you go to the Prime data migration tool, you will be able to run the PDART, right? This assessment and readiness tool will give you some insights of your Prime and what you can move into your Catalyst Center. You can execute the PDART from here and then download the report. We have a sample here created already for you. So you can see the Cisco DNAC ready report versions that we have assessed is 310 against 235. Number of migration readiness that has been passed. There is 1 warning and 1 fail. Devices, I only have a few on this set up. All the use cases, as Kavita mentioned, there are going to be some use cases that may be fully supported, some unsupported, and some that we already have on the roadmap. As you know, the parity roadmap that we have from Prime to Catalyst Center has been, we have been working on this all the time. So some of these unsupported or roadmap will be available for you soon. So you can see the compatibility status of these summary results. We see the type of devices that we have. If you have any other families, you can see that either they are supported or not. You can also review the Catalyst Center compatibility matrix to make sure that all the devices that you want to move from Prime to Catalyst Center, they are supported. There may be some legacy devices that you want to move as well. So please refer to that specific legacy compatibility matrix so you can make sure that you can manage them in some way, okay? You can see that the compatibility details for the versions that we have on these switches, for example, is good, it's supported. The scale numbers, as Kavita mentioned and showed you already, are going to be all the limitations for a number of devices, for switches, wireline controllers, physical ports, etc. You will have some insights in here as well. And then the use case summary results. Which ones are available for you? Just taking some examples. Network devices, inventory supported, some alarms, events, they're fully supported. There may be some few that port groups, out of the box port groups, they are not supported on our Catalyst Center yet. Trust assessment and some couple of others may not be available for you, but we're working on that. So this is an example of the PDART report. If we go back to our Prime, you can see that we have the Prime data migration tool. You can click in here. The latest versions that require for you to install it, you can just run it from here, and it will be asking for you information about your Catalyst Center, right? So from here, you will enter the IP address of your Catalyst Center and your admin credentials. It will establish a connection. I already did this morning. So it will establish the connectivity. It will check that it has full connectivity and the credentials are good. You can add multiple servers, and then you can click Next. You can select the Enable Automatic Synchronizations for Data checkbox. This will ensure that any changes you make to the groups and devices in Prime after the initial migration will be automatically synced with the Catalyst Center. And then you can also check the Include Newly Added Data during Dynamic Synchronization. So with this, the captures of any groups and devices added to Prime will be added after the initial migration. We'll give you some insights about how many site maps, devices, which ones have available, or recommended scale for your migration, and then you can click Next. Let me get back to our video because in there I have some more devices that, some more information that you can take a look with for the migration while it's happening. So let's move this a little bit forward. We already have the credentials there. We already have set up the connectivity to our Catalyst Center. The sync settings have been configured already. Okay, and then you can start getting into this usage detail. You can review that locations that you will be moving from Prime to Catalyst Center, right? There are going to be the site groups, the site maps, devices you can migrate, depends on the things you will be moving. There is also an option that is going to be the DNAC site builder that you can create on the fly some new sites during this migration. It's not needed for now, but you can give a try and just add something if you want to prepare some new sites when you are doing this migration. But if you see, you have already selected on the usage details, test site 1, test building, and the 2 floors that we have in there, right? Give it a second. This will provide all this available resources and information for the migration to happen into Catalyst Center. Now we will select some of the groups that you can see here. They're the groups that are marked for migration. And you can also select the templates that are available for you for the configuration template to be migrated from Prime to Catalyst Center during this sync. There's not migrated templates and migrated templates. We can select the one that we saw before an example. We can carefully review all the selected data that we have in here. You will have a summary to ensure that everything matches to your needs for the migration into Catalyst Center. So please keep in mind that this synchronization process may take some time. It will depend on the size of your Prime deployment, and the amount of data sites that you will be selecting to migrate into Catalyst Center. Let's wait for it. We can first sync there. And then we will wait for the process to be completed. You can see the complete process here from initializing to group migration, map migration, and template migration. You can see all the details of things happening on the fly here. Let's move a little bit forward. And after everything is completed, you can go back to your Catalyst Center, go to the sign. You can review that on the hierarchy. That you have a new site that is the test site 1, the test building, the 2 floors that we have seen before on our prime. And then you will see that everything has been imported, all the maps and the devices also. You can review later on these, on your inventory that the devices are there. It may take a little bit for them to be synced. So all the hierarchy, the maps, the AP location, and heat maps, you can see that everything is good, and it came from the prime migration, and you can confirm that everything has been imported successfully to the Catalyst Center. So if we go back to the provision inventory, you will see that these devices may take a little bit more time to get fully synchronized, but you can see that the process to import sites and the devices themselves into Catalyst Center with these tools is very easy, right? So with this, we conclude the demonstration for the PDART tool and the migration tool. So you can see that we have successfully migrated some key elements from Prime to Catalyst Center for a smooth transition during your network migrations. If you want to get more information, please let us know. So you can review everything that is needed. All the documentation will be shared with you later on. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio. So this brings us actually to the end of our session, and I want to quickly summarize some key points that we talked about today. First thing is we want to verify that the system pre-checks before attempting a migration. We are doing that either by doing it manually or through the automated PDART tool, whichever you choose to use. Secondly, we want to remember that there are 2 options that are available to migrate data from Prime infrastructure to Catalyst Center, but the coexistence tool is going to take precedence since it provides a seamless transition. However, if you're using a Prime instance that is below 3.5 and you simply cannot upgrade, then perhaps you can look into manual migration method, but coexistence tool is what Cisco recommends. And with that, I am going to conclude this session and hand it off over to Tanner. Tanner, there you go.
Thank you so much, Kavita. Great job. Great session today. And thank you so much, Julio, for the demo as well. We are to our Q&A portion of today's session. Just as a quick reminder, if you are here with us on WebEx and have a question for our presenters, submit that through the Q&A panel here on WebEx, and we will answer it now. I do have a few questions here for both you and Julio. Kavita, feel free, whoever would like to answer. Let's start with this first question. Can I make changes from Catalyst Center to Prime infrastructure?
Yeah, I can take it. You can go, Kavita. It's okay.
Yeah, so once we've set up the coexistence tool, then after that, Catalyst Center cannot share the changes to Prime infrastructure. But Prime can sync new and any modified details to Catalyst Center after the first sync. So no, we cannot make changes from Catalyst to Prime.
Great, thanks. Does the Prime share changes on the topology to Catalyst Center automatically?
I can take that one. Yes, Prime will sync these new details to Catalyst Center if we select the proper sync settings, as we mentioned today, during our initial force sync.
Let's get to another question here. Does the Prime share devices config to Catalyst Center?
Yes, they do share configurations like SNMP and CLI credentials. From the Catalyst Center will provision its own device controllability settings that it pushes to every device that is discovered and managed. So yes.
Great, thank you, Kavita. Here's another one. Do I need to upgrade my Prime to work with Catalyst Center?
Yeah, I'll take that. It will depend on the version of Prime in Catalyst Center that you have. So we need to remember that we utilize the coexistence tool. We will need Prime version 3.5 and above. And for more information, please follow the compatibility matrix, and that will guide you better.
Great. Thank you so much. It looks like, just searching through, seeing if there's any other questions here. It does look like that wraps up some questions. Once again, if you do have a question, we still have a little bit of time here. Submit that through the Q&A panel here on WebEx. Kavita, I'll start with you. Is there anything else that you would like to touch on here before we do wrap up shortly?
I'm good. Just want to thank all the attendees and my co-presenter Julio and you, Tanner, for a great session. Thank you, everyone. Hope you found the session useful.
Of course. Julio, is there anything else you'd like to add as well?
Same. Thanks everyone for coming up today, and we'll keep you posted about some new webinars that we will have available for you. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to the both of you and the whole team for bringing your knowledge to the Cisco community today. If you do have a question for Kavita or Julio, we'll keep that Q&A window open for a couple more minutes. For even more tutorials, demonstrations, and future webinars, please visit the Cisco Learning Network. You can also follow up with any further questions about today's event, view the resources that we discussed today, and also view its recording through the post-webinar discussion thread. I've just placed that link in the chat screen for you to view. You can ask any further questions there and follow up there as well as catch other recordings and future recordings on the Cisco Learning Network. Once again, we thank everybody for joining us today, and we will see you next time on the Cisco Learning Network.